All right, welcome to second edition of Weather and Climate Chat here with Monsoon, Mike Regensburger, and Dr. Michael Davis, KU meteorology professor. Dr. Davis, how are you today?
I'm doing great. We have some nice clear skies, although one might say a little too clear. Perhaps the weather's been a little too dry for them lately.
We mentioned that last week. I mean, it seems that every time we get together, it's nice, which is nice, but it's also getting a little antsy, at least you and I are, for a little bit of activity.
Yeah, there comes a point where you want to break in the cycle.
Mm-hmm. And, we had a pretty comfortably cool weekend, the last weekend, I should say. And then this week, kind of a similar pattern to last week where it's warming up to near 80, but the humidity and the dew points still nice and low, so it gets nice and cool at night.
Yeah, the winds out of the north have also been helping keeping the temperatures cooler.
Yeah, I wanted to mention that to you. That was kind of interesting. The winds have been, almost persistently out of the north and the northeast the past couple of days, and that's because we have a high pressure to our north and a very persistent storm that's been kind of parked to our south. And I think the Carolinas have been getting hit pretty hard, haven't they?
Yeah, the low's been sitting right off the Carolina coast, and looks like probably wind and rain for pretty much anywhere from Cape Hatteras all the way up to Virginia Beach, Ocean City.
Yeah. Now, the computer models have been kind of all over the place over the past few days on what that storm was going to do. I mean, earlier this week, I saw AccuWeather jumping on the bandwagon that it could be an all-out rainstorm for Philadelphia, and then the models kind of backed off. And now it looks like, once again, we stay dry. It looks like the high pressure to the north keeps that storm at bay.
Yeah, last week in meteorology, I was going to the map discussion, and I was telling the students that I think the high pressure is pretty much well-positioned to keep that low where it's going to stay. So I wasn't buying into it too much, and looks like I was vindicated with the high pressure staying in place. I
really wasn't too concerned at all for this area. Philadelphia would have been kind of a wild card, and Philadelphia, of course, this weekend is very important because they're having a big visitor this weekend, so everybody's watching the Philadelphia weather for this weekend. But it looks like our friend Pope Francis gets through the weekend in Philadelphia mainly dry, maybe just a shower, if that. But
yeah, that's pretty much what it's looking like. The rain shield's pretty much going to stop at the Mason-Dixon line, and you're not going to get any sort of precipitation north of it, or maybe some scattered clouds over the weekend for us, but that's pretty much it.
And now next week I was looking a little bit. It looks like once again we get into a couple days of above normal temperatures again after a cool down this weekend. It looks like we do cool down over this weekend, and it's not really a front that's coming through. I think it's just a slight change in wind direction that's going to make us a little bit cooler this weekend. Yeah,
it's looking like a change in wind direction could be giving us some warmer temperatures.
Yeah,
and the rest of the month is looking dry, like the rest of
pretty
September
dry and boring,
has been.
Do you think we're finally going to get into some more active weather into October?
More active than this, I would certainly hope so.
I would say.
But I don't know if we'll see a full-out severe weather outbreak or any real strong storms. Typically, that's more confined for the summer months.
Right.
Don't really get any sort of squall lines or supercells or tornadoes usually in October. It's not out of the realm of possibilities, but more or less, I don't think we're going to see that.
I saw I think it was the Climate Center or National Weather Service. Well, they're kind of, together, but mentioned that this September looks like it's going to go down as one of a very warm September, averaging at least, I think, 5 degrees above normal, and could go down as one of the top 10 warmest Septembers here in all time.
Well, we did have a few 90-degree days in September.
More than just 90. It was a 95, I think, Reading recorded one day in early September. So we're kind of getting close to that century mark there in September. So
yeah, if you're talking about that early September, that's pretty unusual.
Right. I do remember September's being quite warm in the past. I can remember multiple Labor Days and stuff that were pretty hot, but this was really hot. We were deep into the 90s.
Yes, yeah. I think 90s, and even if 95 down in Reading, that's what you would typically find in the strong summer heating of July rather than early September.
Yeah, so we're kind of getting at that part of the year now where we're seeing the daily average high temperature slowly dropping and trailing off each day. But it seems like we've always, even though we've seen our temperatures follow suit, kind of trailing off, we're always still averaging about 5-6 degrees above normal. Like earlier this month, normal highs would have been in the low 80s, and we were in the upper 80s and 90s. Now normal highs are in the lower 70s, mid 70s, and we're in the upper 70s and low 80s. So we just keep following that pattern of, we're going down, but we're still a good 5 to 10 degrees above normal.
Yes, and the Climate Prediction Center seems to be
Suggested
continuing
that
those
pattern.
above average temperatures for October.
Okay, so maybe we'll be looking at an October with a lot of days in the 60s and 70s instead of 50s, you would think. Maybe.
Yes, and I will say November, it looked like pretty equal chances.
Okay.
So we may get back to the quote-unquote normal for
finally
November.
Well, if you like fall weather and you don't want to get right into a sudden winter, I mean, this is probably a good-looking fall in that sense. So a lot of warm days, cool nights. Can't argue with that, I guess.
It'll be interesting to see when exactly the leaves start to turn.
A lot of people, we can address that briefly. Somebody asked me that on my own page, my own weather page. They said, Monsoon Mike, was this crazy, dry, late summer, early fall going to affect leaves in any way? And I didn't really have an answer to that. Do you have an answer to that?
There have been some research done into when exactly you get the first colors to be noticed in the trees themselves. And it typically has to deal more, I believe, with moisture levels.
Okay.
So if we were having more of a drier season, you would be thinking we're going to be having the colors appear sooner.
Oh, okay.
I believe it was about a week or so earlier than normal.
Okay.
If I remember the article specifically, it was actually I saw a presentation on it.
Okay.
Just last year at AAG
Right.
Middle States, which next weekend is the Regional Geography Conference as well. Some of the geography students from our department are going to attend, and
Nice.
I have one student that's looking at how spring precipitation affects firefly population.
Oh, interesting.
And she'll be presenting her research at that conference.
Well, one of my, getting back to the leaf thing, one of my followers was concerned because they just love autumn colors, and they were concerned, okay, we're having Monsoon, Mike, we're having a lot of warm days and cool nights, which is good, but we're not having any rain. Does the rain, you were talking about temperatures, but does rain affect, lack of rain affect the leaf colors at all?
It should have some sort of impact on it.
Yeah.
You're going to get more, I think, from the insulation or the amount
Okay.
of sunlight that's received. So if we're having more intense radiation, probably be going for a longer period of time.
Okay.
I can't really speak fully to what impact the moisture would have on the leaf coloration, but I can look into it, and I could talk about it next week.
Okay, we'll just have to wait and see. What's normal for this part of the country when we start seeing some colors? Like early October, we start seeing some leaves starting to change?
Yeah,
Okay.
It's about early, mid-October, I'd say, we
Okay.
first start to see some color. I don't think the peak foliage will occur till much later in
Late
October, perhaps early November.
Okay. Sounds good. All right. Well, that's pretty much what to look forward to over the next couple of weeks. Of course, this is a weekly feature, so we'll reconvene next week. But now I want to get into our every week as part of this little segment that we do. We try to also take on a climate topic. Last week what did we take on last week?
National
we took on the
Geographic.
National Geographic. That's right. This week, Pope Francis is making his first visit ever to the United States. A lot of hype and excitement about that, and a lot of encouragement on the side of scientists who are concerned with climate change, that this is one of the first popes that's really taken that topic under his wing, and thanks to that has even gotten some folks who don't necessarily follow any religion, agnostics, atheists. Okay, I don't really believe in that side of things. However, I'm happy to hear you addressing this. And sure enough, this past Wednesday, he railed against that pretty good. He gave a speech at the White House and, quote, this is from the Wall Street Journal, quote, "It seems clear to me that climate change is a problem which can no longer be left to our future generation. When it comes to the care of our common home, we are living at a critical moment of history," the 78-year-old pontiff said. What do you think of those remarks, Dr. Davis?
I think they're very justly deserved, that we need to start considering climate change, mitigation strategies, and dealing with it as we move forward. I believe that this generation that we have, that are students here at the university or in elementary school right now, high school and whatnot, they are the ones that are going to be receiving the first main signs of climate change.
Sure.
And they are perhaps the last generation that can be capable of dealing with it.
Right.
So we need to start working on how to preserve this planet for future generations before it's too late.
Right.
And I think that's the point that the Pope was trying to get at when he said that we are simply stewards of this earth and we need to take care of it during our time.
Right.
So if we are noticing temperatures increasing, that could have huge ramifications on economic and social well-beings of countries, then we need to address that while we still have the opportunity to.
That's a very good point, Dr. Davis, because we hear some of the Pope's critics saying things like, "Oh, he shouldn't be touching those things. He should be, focusing more on, religion or stuff. He shouldn't be touching these areas that he's not an expert on." But you bring up a very good point. Climate change affects those other areas. It affects economics. It affects spirituality. It affects all of that stuff. Because if we don't have an Earth to live on, what do we really have?
We have nothing.
Yeah.
I have a photo that I just put up on my door in my office that has Spock on it from Star Trek, and said the destruction of your world for imaginary wealth is illogical.
Yeah.
And I always get students coming in saying, I love that one.
Yeah.
So it speaks to them. And I also think, too, that the way how the Pope is presenting this, it's not like he's coming at it from a purely religious side. He does have experience in the science. He was a chemist technician at one point.
Yeah.
So he is a scientist himself.
Right.
So he understands what's going on in the scientific community and realizes that this is a matter of grave concern to many and needs to be pushed forward on the Senate floor. And he's going to go to the United Nations and speak there, presumably about climate change there.
Right.
And there's talk that maybe the Pope can actually start to push this ball further down the road.
That's what I was going to ask, Dr. Davis. Where do you think these comments are going to go? Are politicians, do you think, just going to take them, oh, okay, nice thought, but not going to happen? Or is that going to be, do you think this maybe is a tipping point of some sort, what he's saying?
I would certainly hope it's a tipping point, but I think that remains to be seen.
Right.
Just a couple days ago, there were, I believe, about 10 or 12 House Republicans that decided to break rank and side with the climate scientists.
Good.
But it should be noted that they are from moderate districts. They're not
the hardcores,
Yeah, so they don't have to worry about re-election, I think, as much as certain individuals do. And the other point that came to me earlier is, perhaps we could talk about this at some other time too, is Hillary Clinton's stance on the Keystone XL pipeline.
Yeah.
She was mum about her stance for a long period of time. And then the Pope comes, or his visit is coming, and she decides to say that she's opposed to the Keystone XL pipeline just a day or two before the Pope actually arrives in the U.S.
Interesting
So I think
timing.
that could be some type of way to perhaps latch on to the wave that's riding with the Pope right now to cater to some of the undecided voters.
I know some Bernie Sanders fans. I'm a Bernie Sanders supporter. I'll just flat out say that. Are saying that.
I will say I am too.
Yeah. Okay. Well, good. That's an interesting theory about the Pope. I never even put those two together, although I should have. But some Bernie Sanders fans are taking the credit, saying, "Well, that's Bernie Sanders slowly pushing her to the left." So it could have been a little bit of both. Could have been the Pope and Bernie Sanders. Poll numbers going up and her getting a little nervous. So,
and I think Hillary had to make a stance on it.
She had to. She was too quiet about it.
And she had to address the environmental concerns that I think she ultimately stood for when she was Secretary of State and started to push for the Keystone XL pipeline, or at least the study to go into whether you had any sort of climate effect to it.
Right. Okay. Well, good stuff there. Well, I guess it'll just be a matter of waiting and seeing. Hopefully we do take the Pope's words to heart, because people on both sides of the aisle just seem totally in, Pope mania right now, just totally enthralled by his presence. And like I said, I mean, whether you are a faithful person or not, spiritual person or not, whatever you call it, you can't help but appreciate the guy's fervor and, passion for what he believes. So that's a good thing. So
Yes, and I think that without having a Pope come out against climate change or for climate change,
Right.
it's going to be interesting to see what kind of force the Pope is actually capable of producing on this
Right.
issue.
Well, I guess it'll be one of those things. Time will tell, right?
Yes, we'll certainly see.
All right. As I always like to wrap up each little segment, plug your page, I'll plug my page, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, Michael Davis Facebook page for weather forecasts.
Okay. And Monsoon Mike's Weather Headquarters, and you and I both kind of do the same thing. I don't want to call you competition because we're friendly competition, but we both do a great job on our own specific pages. And I noticed I give you a lot of credit because you focus a lot more on the technical discussion, which I don't get into as much.
My page was originally made to cater to my
students,
weather analysis students. Yeah. And my meteorology students, where it gets more scientific.
Right.
You do more of the public side, which
right.
Equally as important.
Right. I try to make that as. I love the National Weather Service, but I think you'll agree with me on this. Sometimes their technical discussions are like almost too technical. It's like, what is that? So I try to translate that for people a little bit because.
If they're making that product available to the public, sometimes they get a little too in depth, and it's not very usable.
Right.
By the public.
But I appreciate the humor. They sometimes it depends on who the writer is. Sometimes whoever writes it is witty. So I appreciate that sometimes too. So
for example, the day that Leonard Nimoy died.
Yes,
they had live long and prosper, right?
Right. Or do you remember when the government shut down a couple of years ago in that office in Alaska? They had they I don't know if you remember this, but they wrote up their technical discussion, and the first letter of each sentence added up to "please pay us, please" or something like that because they weren't getting paid. Remember that?
I forget what.
I don't know what the exact
sentence was,
right.
but I do remember
something along that line. Sort of like, "Please pay us."
Yeah, the first letter of each sentence lined up, and you got saying something along those lines.
Right. So actually those technical discussions, even though they can be a little deep sometimes, are pretty fun. I like to sit there and read them. That's my evening reading, and my wife looks at me and she's like, you're reading that discussion again. So, well, thanks so much, Dr. Davis. We'll have you back again here next week, same time. Just a reminder, this airs on KUR every Friday at 1:30, repeating Saturday at 7:45. And also available on the KUR website. Just click on podcasts, and you can listen to this any darn well time you please.
It's always good.
Yeah. So thanks so much. See you next week.
See ya.